Hey guys, so for the folks who are curious to know what's inside the T9 box, once you pull the package out, you have a nice looking red color box. Within the box itself, we have the thermostat, it's flush, and then we have the adapter that is the wire controller, if I'm not wrong, through which all the wires go through, which are then connected to the thermostat that go like this. Apart from that, we have a room sensor which is provided in the box. My setup came with a room sensor. I think there are different options where you can buy one without the room sensor, but I think I would highly recommend the room sensor because it kind of helps us to maintain the temperature within specified by each room where you probably might sleep or work in, so that we're not using a lot of electricity. Along with that, it also comes with a C-wire adapter. In most cases, you may or may not need it. I think most of the new houses have C-wire installed. In my case, I'm going to use this on a setup which already uses a T4pro, which has C4, what's that? The C-wire, a C-wire already installed, so I wouldn't need the wire adapter. So if you do, then this is what you need. And then apart from that, definitely comes with a bunch of documentations on how you need to use the product. So today we're going to go ahead and replace one of these Honeywell T4pro series thermostats with one of these, which is a Honeywell T9 series. My intention here is pretty much to switch out these from the manual programming and manual setting of each temperatures onto a smart device so that you can get rebates on these, as well as control your home from a smartphone or a smart device such as Google Home, Alexa, and things around that. All right, so the first thing that you need to know is that when you're going to program or do any settings on these, first thing you need to ensure is that the device setting is set at off, and make sure that if you have a 2-story house or a 3-story house and you have thermostats on each floor, you go ahead and change this to off on all the devices. This kind of just ensures that your HVAC doesn't turn on or turn off while you're trying to program these, just kind of avoids any problems from popping up. So I think once you've done this to off, you just need to check your HVAC system to ensure that everything is set in idle mode and nothing is currently running. As an example, there's no heating or cooling happening from the HVAC. So for example, if you look at this settings for my HVAC controller, it currently says that the device is at idle. If I filter in, yep, you would see that it is in idle. So you want to make sure that it is sitting in the idle condition before you start processing anything with the HVAC. All right, now that we've verified these settings, the next thing we want to know is what are the current settings that are set up on my T4. I'm completely new to the whole HVAC system, so one way of looking at it is going through the manual. So luckily I did have my T4's manual with me, and if you notice, there is an option to go into advanced settings. This kind of helps us understand what was the setting that was set up by the installer before us. So since I don't know what this is or what my system is, I usually go into this and go ahead and check what are the settings they have set up. So to go ahead and initiate that process, what you could do is hit the menu button and the plus button at the same time. If you hold it for about 3 to 4 seconds, you would notice that it goes into some advanced setting mode. And from here, you could go ahead and select to see different options. So the thing that I would recommend is if you don't have this book handy with you, you guys could probably go into the Honeywell website to probably get the meaning for each of these sections and probably have them either printed out, or if you have the book, just write down what are the options available. So in this case, the code 120 is set at 3 for my system, which means that the programming, it allows programming for 5 days or something. Mainly you want to focus on these numbers. The heating system type is a heat pump. I did not know that was my system in my house. So this kind of helps me understand what was the previous setting that is set up on my system, and I could pretty much replicate it on the T9 when I install it. So what I've done is I've gone ahead through each settings, just navigating through them by selecting, not making any changes to the system, because we definitely want to come back to this to understand in case something goes wrong and we just want to use it as it is. So go ahead through all of these. I would recommend that you just write down these things on the book or write down separately. So for example, this was the heat pump, and then I'm using an air-to-air heat pump. And all of these settings can be written down, whichever are available, and we can just replicate it for the new device. So once this is done, you're good to go. You could go ahead and back out from these settings and go back to home. So this kind of brings you back to the same page where you were. Your system works. If you were to go in and enable heat or cool, everything should work as normal, right? So now once this is done, the next step we want to do is, we know the settings, we would go ahead and remove this device, and don't be afraid to remove it. It just pops off easily. Once you pop it off, you would see this controller. It is very important that you kind of have a look at what is the wiring underneath this controller. So if I open this controller device, you would see there are a bunch of wiring options. What I would recommend is take a picture of your device, not this screen what I have here, but take a picture of whatever the controller is on your end, because these wirings that you have here kind of is required to be set up on your T9. It was going to ask where are the wires connected. So do not touch these wires because they might pass electricity. So to avoid that, take a picture with your phone and then you're good to close it. All right, now that we have taken a picture of the device, we would go ahead and install the T9. So I'm just gonna place the device in. You would see that it is gonna start up slowly but steadily. Once the device has started up, it's gonna ask you for some of the basic settings. So select language. As of now, I think this is my hallway. So I'm gonna put hallway. My preferred is Fahrenheit. And now if you see here, in my case, for this device, I did not have to install anything for a C-wire because my system, which used T4, already had a C-wire in. And to understand what is a C-wire, when you took the picture of the wiring underneath, you would see a label called C that you see on this device over here. We already have that wired, so we don't need to do any of it. So we didn't install an optional adapter, but it's already pre-installed. So in this case, we would say no. This is normal that it shows up. It says invalid wiring because we have wiring that is different that was used for T4, but we want to use the same thing for the T9. So it has an option that says enter wire manually. So this is where you kind of need to look through your image to understand what were the things that you had. So in my case, I had an OB, I had a G, I didn't have RC, I had W2, and I had Y. So these are the wirings that I had for my T4, which I'm just going to pass on to this device. And this is where it is important that the picture that you took a few steps ago is going to guide you in checking these boxes. Once you verify that this setting is correct, go ahead to the next screen. So this is where it's going to ask, what kind of system do you have? Do you want cooling to happen when the system, the O wire is triggered? So think of it as a binary option, I think. That's probably how I can explain it the best. So when a cooling needs to happen, it's going to send 0 as a signal. And this is where the information that you grabbed from the T9 is going to help you. So if you check this number, which was 218 for your option, you would notice that it says for OB, my system was set to 0. I'm going to use that same option. So if you see here, cooling, which is what it says over here. If it's 0, it's going to go cool. So that's the same option I'm going to use and just going to proceed further. Success. All right. So now if you have any smart sensors that you got with the T9, in my case I did, but I'm going to set it up later once the system is up and running and I have everything working. So I'm going to just go ahead and set up later. However, I'm going to go have the device connected to my Wi-Fi. So I'm just going to proceed with that. I'm going to pause the video while I get connected and then I'll join back. Once you've entered the password for the Wi-Fi, it's going to go ahead and say that it has been connected successfully to the Wi-Fi. So now as the next step, you need to go ahead and install or set up your application for Honeywell Home. So just as an FYI, if you try to search for the application called Honeywell, it's not called Honeywell. So in case you're like, oh, what's the name of the app? So the name of the app has been changed to something called Resido. So if you go ahead and search the App Store for Honeywell Home, it's going to go ahead and say the name of the app is Resido. So go ahead and install the app. So if you see here, it says Honeywell Home, but the app is Resido. So I have already have the app installed on my system. So I'm just going ahead, I'm going to go ahead and proceed with it. So now the next step goes with us doing the steps from the phone itself. Alright, so in this process, now we've gone ahead and opened the app on our smartphone. Now we're going to go ahead and add a thermostat. So now if we see here, we're going to select the T9. That's the thermostat we're setting up today. Now we select that this is at our home location, and to proceed with the application installation process, we have to go ahead and enable flight mode. So we're just going to do that and go on to the next step. It takes a few seconds to, I guess, process some information, and after that it is eventually going to show up the thermostat on the application. Alright, now that the thermostat has shown up, we're going to go ahead and proceed to add this device. At this point, it's going to send a 4-digit code to the thermostat, and we have to enter it back into the application just to verify that we kind of own the device. Alright, so now that is done. Now the pairing is successfully completed. It asks us to turn off the flight mode. You can do this. In some states, they do offer rebates, at least in the United States. So if your state offers any rebates, please feel free to go ahead and go to the next step to find rebates. But as a part of this video, I'm not going to go through the process of rebates because it's going to be different for everyone. So I'm just going to skip this for now. Alright, so that kind of completes the installation process. And if you guys notice, we have the hallway sensor on the app, and if you see, we have the basic options. And if I go into the mode, you would notice that currently it has different modes. Currently it is sitting in the heating mode, but more on this in a few seconds. Alright, looking back at the thermostat at this point, it does say that you have successfully linked it with the application. So once I go on to the next step, you would notice that the system is showing my current room temperature. You could definitely go in and add new sensors. I think there's a device management and you can add sensors to this. So I could probably show that in another video, but as of now, I'm just going to test if the thermostat is working as expected. So if I go back and to test if all your settings have been installed correctly, what I would recommend is going into the settings, scrolling down, going to advanced settings, and going into modify configurations. So here you would notice that we can kind of toggle through all the options that have been established on the device. So in this case, we already established that it is going to be a heat pump. It's an air to heat pump, and all of this information can be gathered from your T4, where we wrote down all of this information on the piece of paper, and we could go ahead and cross-reference it to ensure that everything is set up correctly. And as described, we have the O to B in cool. In my case, and in my T4 sensor or the thermostat, I did have that both my compressors only have, I only have one compressor for the whole house, so I'm going to keep one. Changeover. So if you look at the option over here, it says that it kind of allows us to do manual cooling or automatic cooling, which means the system could heat and cool the house at the same time. I'm going to keep this as manual because I have only one HVAC compressor. And that compressor, if let's say my top floor is kind of cool and then the bottom floor is kind of heat, I don't want it to affect my compressor's functioning or deteriorate it. So I'm just going to keep that to manual. Adaptive intelligent recovery is set to yes. These temperatures can be set up by you guys, but this also is an information that's available from the T4 while you note down all of that information. In this case, you could definitely, I think the media filter is like the air filter that sits in the HVAC. So I've put that as yes because it kind of allows me to get a sense of how often I need to replace my filter. So in this case, I've replaced my filter every 90 days and proceed from there. Rest all is mostly turned off and it's just basic settings and you're done. So just ensure that this is set up correctly. This kind of avoids any conflicts from happening down the road. Right, so if I go back to the application underneath and then go to mode, as of now, as we had initially set up, everything was set to a turned off mode. So if you go ahead and set the heat to begin, we could go ahead and see that heating mode would be enabled. So currently my room temperature is at 66. I'm trying to heat it to 70. So I'm gonna trigger that to happen. All right, so if you notice, it says waiting for equipments. This usually depends on how quick your HVAC can be turned on. Once a signal is sent from this device onto the HVAC. So usually this takes about 2 to 3 minutes. So don't panic if it doesn't immediately trigger your HVAC system. So let's give it a few minutes, and we would notice that this signal that says waiting for equipment goes away, and your HVAC would start making its fan sound or something. And I'll show you the next step from there. While the equipment is still trying to send the signal to the HVAC, you would notice that the HVAC system that I have still says that the system isn't idle. So what would happen here is that the thermostat controller is going to send a signal to the HVAC system, and then the HVAC system would change the setting from the idle mode onto the heating or the cooling mode as desired. So as you guys notice now, the signal or the message has gone away, sending, I don't know, I think it was sending a message or something. So that message has gone away, and you would notice that the system itself changes its color to a red color, kind of indicating that, or an orange color, I guess, indicating that it is actually heating. So you would notice that the heating has been started with the temperature going up to 70 Celsius, and with the current room temperature being 66. Just to show on the flip side of what happens on the HVAC side, if you notice here, you would see that the system has been initiated on the HVAC controller, saying that the heat has begun, and currently it's trying to heat up the system, and it's going up to 75, 78, 77. So it'll gradually go up to a temperature which is sufficient to heat your whole house or the room or whatever. So that kind of illustrates that the thermostat kind of sent the message over to the HVAC controller, and things are working fine. So just to test that everything is okay, we're going to go ahead and also test if the cooling gives the right controls to the HVAC system. So this completes our full testing process. Now to trigger the cooling to happen, what I would recommend is go into the settings option, go to the mode, and change it to off for now. So let's be patient with the HVAC and not give it too many controls. So I would say just go ahead and turn it off. This is going to send the signal over to the HVAC system that I don't need you to heat the house anymore, and you would see that it's in off mode. So wait for the HVAC to completely shut down, and you would probably see the same settings in the HVAC that says it's in idle mode, and then you could go further and then test the cooling settings are working correctly or not. And once your HVAC is turned off, you would just go into this option, you would go to the mode and select the cooling mode. Even though my room temperature is at 66, I'm going to go ahead and try, or 65, I'm going to try to cool my house to, let's say, 63, and see if the cooling works appropriately. Now that my system is in the idle mode, I'm going to go ahead and set up or test the cooling control. So I'm setting the system to cool, and then I'm going to set the temperature of the house to 63 or 62, just to trigger the system to go ahead and cool the house. So again, you get the same message that it's going to wait for the equipment. Please wait for 2 to 3 minutes for this signal to kind of trigger your HVAC to start making its wonderful sound and force air into the house. So once this is done, what's going to happen is this screen is going to turn into a blue color, where the orange symbolized heat and blue would symbolize cooling. So that's what is going to happen, and then the system is going to trigger. All right, now you will notice that the screen has changed to I think a darker blue now, and then the waiting for equipment sign is gone, which kind of shows that the signal has been sent to the system to start cooling the house. So the cooling has begun, and we're just going to go look at the HVAC if the signal has been received correctly. So if you notice here, the signal kind of has been sent to the HVAC system. You would see that the system is in cooling mode, and the temperature is dropping down to cool the house as expected. So the the HVAC system is working as expected, and the thermostat is sending the right signal. So this kind of gives us the confidence that we've kind of set up the things correctly. Now we have kind of completed the testing. I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the system because I have to do the same process in my other flow, just to ensure that my system is on the same page and I have the whole house set up with T9. Hopefully this video helped you guys in understanding how to change from T4 Pro to T9. And again, just a reminder, I'm not an experienced person in this. I'm sharing my experience of how I set my device up. So far I don't see any problems in my system. If I do, I will definitely come back and update this video, but hopefully this helped someone who's a newbie like me and wants to set up the system instead of paying $250 to $300 to someone to go ahead and make this change for you guys. Hope you guys have a good one. Cheers.